Good evening, everyone, and this is my Hasegawa F-104 Sierra F-104S, built as one of the new build F-104X for X-ray, which is based on the U for uniform or Ukraine. So the genesis of this modification has come from the whatifians, considering that Macron's Rafale project for Ukraine is slightly unrealistic and will come too late. So they've looked at what they have in the cupboard, and they've got a lot of F-104 shells left over because they buy a lot of redundant aircraft and store them. And in my law, what if law, the F-104 was used by the whatifians, the Malagasys, in the 1960s, but then they really focused around the English Electric Lightning, and by the early 70s it was retired. So they've got a lot of airframes left over, and they think that the Rafale is just too far away in the future, too expensive. It's a 4.5 generation fighter, and actually the needs of the Ukrainian Air Force would be better served by a point defence interceptor that can accidentally take off from Poland and accidentally refuel from NATO tankers, and has the range unrefueled to get to where it needs to go, and it can fire a collection of beyond visual range missiles, here the Meteor, and then within visual range missiles the AIM-9X. Also on this version it retains the M61 cannon, which is down here, and that's different to the Italian S models, which could carry the Sparrows. It also has an infrared search and track radar, an Israeli Alta radar there in the nose, and most importantly it has a lot of airframe modifications. Now, I've been wary of doing this for a while, and in my what if law or whatifery fiction, basically the Starfighters were good, but as you know, the Starfighter has a T-tail. When you enter high angles of pitch, the wing cancels out the tail, and you can enter some very dangerous flight characteristics. Landing speed is high, there's not much forgiveness in the aircraft, and if you're not a good pilot, you can very easily find yourself in difficulties. And even if you are a good pilot and you're flying in bad weather, like the German Air Force was, the aircraft gained the reputation of the Widowmaker. So what I've done here to change it is I've moved the tail down here, a bit like the Lancer project that Lockheed was working on. And I've also added leading edge wing extensions here, quite large ones. And I've given it a lot more thrust with an F-414 engine tucked away there, which is from a Hasegawa Super Hornet. The tail has a radar warning receiver on the rear and the front, and fillets just to give it a little bit of extra lift. But the whole idea of this is it changes, and I've been running this through ChatGPT AI, is it changes the Starfighter to almost 1.1 thrust aircraft, which is superb. It gives it low speed handling, an angle of attack of about 20 degrees, and a 9G projected turn radius. So it's quite a hot ship. Still best to use the slashing attack tactics and fight with energy, not getting into a turning fight with something like an F-16 or an Su-35. But you don't need to, because you've got the Israeli radar, the infrared search and track, lightning targeting pod underneath there, A&L Q184 long jamming pod, the two Meteors for long-range engagements, and the two AIM-9Xs. It would have a helmet-mounted sight and the Martin Baker ejection seat 00. Now you'd say, well, how can the F-414 get the air? Well, the F-414 doesn't need large intakes if you look at the grip in E, but what they've done, and these are modelled in the open position, not the closed position, the open one, is they've added extra air inlets, auxiliary air inlets, above the intake duct there, so that when it's on the ground or when it's at low speed, these open up and they pump a lot more air into that engine. Now, I think the F-104S had auxiliary blow-in doors anyway, back here, but this is just a way of, if you are at a higher angle of attack, up to 20 degrees projected, you can really pump a lot of air into the intake system to keep that F-414 fully fed and powerful. Now, £22,000 of thrust at 30% fuel loading, you're into almost a 1.25 thrust to weight ratio. Energy wise, its wing loading is not going to allow it to compete with something like a Gripen or an F-16, but it's a lot better than it was. Semi-recessed IFR refueling probe there, and missile alert warning countermeasures all over the aircraft, and a chaff and flare pack there at the back. So it's fully equipped for modern combat. The Hasegawa kit is a really nice kit, by the way. I've got one more in the loft stash, which I'm going to do as a flying version, and really I've used a lot of plasticard to make this, and the leading edge wing extensions to me gives me the vibes of a JF-17, but it's still a Mach 2 aircraft. The point and shoot interceptor that the whatifians thought that Ukraine needed. Sadly, I don't think the reception would be a very positive. F-414 engine, American license. If Trump pulls out of the Ukraine war project supporting Ukraine, then that license could be affected. It's a Lockheed airframe. Ultimately, Lockheed would have some say on it. And when you're talking of things like the lightning pod and the jamming pod there and American missiles and systems, I think that would be a restriction. But let me know what you think. I'll throw it open to a vote. I really like it. The Malagasy whatifians really like it. And they are going to field 36 of the X model themselves for their Air National Guard. Do they need to? Probably not. Do they have the F-16I? Yes. Will it free up the F-16I to be more adventurously used? Yes. Will it give the homeland extra coverage? Yes. Is China an advancing great power? Yes. So it's a no-brainer really for them. Really changes the Starfighter from a piece of history to a cutting edge, not quite the top end, but a cutting edge modern aircraft. Take care. Goodbye.